All right, everyone, welcome to the Dealmakers. It's a podcast where we break down some of the biggest moves in real estate and the minds behind them. Our guest today is Ryan Brassel. Ryan,
thanks
welcome,
for having
man. So Ryan's a principal at Rosso Commercial Real Estate Services, industry leader, expert in commercial real estate deals across Maryland and beyond. Done a shitload in his career. And you tell me if how many deals have you done? What's the volume amount?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, it's on the average, anywhere 50 to 60 deals a year.
That's incredible. And you've been doing this for a long time.
About 13 years now.
Jesus. So you've been recognized as 40 under 40 candidate. You've gotten a ton of high stakes deals, and you're in tune with the market trends and what it takes to be a true deal maker in the commercial real estate space. So I want to talk about that in a little bit, but I want the backstory first, man.
Sure.
All right. So you grew up here.
Yep.
All right. Tell me.
Brownsville, born and raised, basically.
All right.
Kind of grew up off General's Highway there, and ended up, unlike my brother went to a Baltimore school, I decided to stay local and went to Severn, or started at Indian Creek, and then that was high school days and the old campus, as we call it, and then went on to Severn for high school, and then had the opportunity to play Division I lacrosse at Fairfield University.
Hell yeah, let's go Stags.
Yeah, that's right.
What was Severn like when you were there?
It was great. A lot of friends. I felt like, everyone, at least, it depends on the class, right? I feel like that's any high school. We had a really close class. We were all really good friends, whether we played lacrosse together or soccer together or not, right?
That's one of the benefits of a small school. I had
Yeah.
Jameson in here yesterday, St. Mary's, same thing. It's like very small student population.
94 kids in my class. Yeah, it was small. I think it's over 100 now because they have that capability because they've added buildings and expanded and done some things. And certainly wish I had those turf fields back in the day.
They are quite nice, man.
Yeah,
they are quite nice. Yeah. And that bouncer gets a lot closer to where you want it to go. So you played lacrosse, you played soccer.
Yeah.
Any of that stuff shaped the way that you...
It's funny. I'd say my real love was soccer, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, we grew up in Maryland. It's lacrosse. I had a stick in my hand at a very young age.
Oh, yeah.
I had an older brother to follow around. If you ever saw the home video that we made for my brother when he first started playing lacrosse, it was pretty comical. He had a hockey knee pads, Brian lacrosse pads that were like twice the size for him.
That's right.
Huge gloves, the old box helmet. Wearing like sneakers, high tops.
Yep.
And it's just like I still have that image in my head of him standing there getting ready to go to Navy lacrosse camp.
Okay.
And who would have thought he would have gone on to Gilman and played at Cornell under Dave Beltramala, Jeff Chambroni.
Damn.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. So he did well, so I had to follow in his footsteps, and but he played football. He was a little bigger than me. I grew up having a love for soccer. So we had a good core group. That never really, we kind of had a club team, but it really wasn't a club back in the day, right?
Right.
We were kind of the Sandlot kids, and we held our own. Actually, a little story, we played in Holland when we were 10 years old.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Damn.
And we represented Team USA under age 11. And
that's crazy.
Yeah, it was fun. It was called the Holland Cup. They had a whole opening ceremony. It was like a miniature World Cup for, like, the oldest team was like 16.
Oh, geez.
And teams across the world. We trained with the Dutch coach for like 2 weeks, and then played in our group setting. So it was us, Albania, Czech Republic at the time, at Poland, and England.
Wow.
And we tied Albania, beat England. English kids were not happy. So they just, like I said, alluded to Sandlot kids. They just lost to a bunch of Sandlot kids.
We just lost to a bunch of farmers in pitchforks.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. But, the Czech Republic and Polish kids, that's what they do every day. It was us, we would go over there and play in the exchange program for lacrosse. We would dominate the Stockport Metros, right?
Yes.
So, it was the reverse. It was eye-opening experience. They our first string, I mean, we just got dominated, and actually those two played each other in the final. I remember watching the match, and the Czechs beat the Polish like 8-0.
Oh my God.
I'm not gonna tell you what we lost by, but we placed 5th out of 40 teams, and
That's pretty
stayed
damn
in like a
good.
village with a bunch of other teams and traded jerseys with kids. And yeah, I mean,
That was back before it was even the cool thing to do. Look at
Yeah.
you guys.
Yeah,
Ahead
exactly.
of the curve. Jesus.
Got the experience of the red light district in Amsterdam at 10 years old.
I bet that was awesome.
There was a hotel. There was a hotel we stayed at, and all the dads, we just arrived, and all the dads are like, all right, boys, go to the pool, get all the bags. So finally, my dad was talking to a couple of other dads, and they're like, have you seen Ryan? Have you seen Timmy? Have you seen so-and-so? And everyone's like, no. And so finally, one of the dads goes over to the pool, and it was a topless pool. And so we were all standing at the pool's edge and hadn't gotten in the pool, and there was like 12 of us just staring across the pool.
That's right.
Yeah.
Being creepy little 10-year-old boys.
It was a total eye-wide experience for a 10-year-old kid going, what is going on here?
You're like, why did
This doesn't happen back home.
What? No, this does not happen back home. This
Right.
is crazy. I love this.
So,
Any part of you that is like, damn, I wish I would have stuck with soccer?
So it's funny. I had these conversations with my dad. Unfortunately, my mom's not around anymore, so I can't do that. But, with my dad, it's one of those things where he regrets it. Like, he's like, I wish I pushed you in that direction. Was I good enough to go D1 or something? I have no idea. I was good. Played 4 years of varsity, in high school, and team captain and all those things, won championship, and it was all
damn good.
Yeah, it was great, and I don't know what my cap was, right? Maybe I was just a D3 soccer player, but who knows? But it was something I just enjoyed, right? I never stressed about it. I just loved it. And have an opportunity to play a Division I sport in general, and lacrosse was fantastic.
Yeah,
right?
Fairfield's pretty damn good.
Yeah, they're having a good year this year.
Yeah.
It's sad to say, the last time they were, a record like that was my freshman year.
Yeah.
And we played Denver at that time, it was Great West Conference.
Yeah.
Which doesn't exist anymore.
That does not exist anymore. No.
Yeah. It was a very strange conference because it was us, Air Force, Denver, Notre Dame, and trying to think of one or two others. But, we won it and then played Duke the first round down at Durham. And that was the year before the whole Duke thing happened.
Oh, God. So you had like Baby Danowski and all those guys there.
It was a real team. Wow. I mean, we got smoked. But it was a cool experience.
That team was
so good.
So bring me to the Fairfield days.
Yeah.
What's that like stepping on campus for the first time?
It's unique. I mean, you're kind of in New England, right? So it's totally different scenery. You go to Fairfield Beach, Long Island Sound, which is cool. I'd say you could really only get used out of it like 3 months of the year, maybe 4. Freshman year, you're typical in the dorms, kind of bug guy going, walking around, trying to figure out college. But there's a good regiment to, lacrosse, right? So it's like, all right, kind of keeps you intact, focused. You're up early, 4:35 a.m., getting ready to work out, go to class, try not to fall asleep, come back. Maybe if you can catch a nap, great. Otherwise you're back at it studying and, getting through your books and so forth. And, after the first couple of months, looking back, like you get the hang of it, right? Yeah. And then it's kind of like, all right, I got this. Sophomore year, you're still in dorms. And then junior year, they actually kind of have townhomes kind of on the upper end of campus.
Okay.
So usually junior year, there's a lottery system. You get like townhomes, or if you're really lucky, you get a beach house.
Oh, damn.
So beach house is not cheap though. At least on campus, you're not paying for it. Yeah. So we had a bunch of us, good buddies, lived together, and actually was lacrosse and non-lacrosse guys, actually, which was fun because it's like, you get it, you live, breathe lacrosse every day. And it's sometimes I just want a mental break and not have to talk about practice or whatever. And then going into senior year, we got a house on the Sound. I think there was like 8 of us.
And like a 2-bedroom.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it was funny. It had, I guess, to make it state law, like you got to have like 2 front doors. Like because the number of like non-family to live in a house or in a rental. So there was 2 addresses, and there was like 4 and 4 was the max, but it was all interconnected.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was like it's the workaround.
Man.
But the houses are awesome. I mean, some of the houses on the point, we actually prefer to be a little away from the point, so that way we didn't have to host parties. We could just crash other people's houses.
There you go. It's a smart way.
But all the houses had different names. Some appropriate to say, some not. But there's one like called the Reach Around.
Okay.
Girl Stoop. The ours was just the Frozen Shamrock.
The Frozen Shamrock.
Yeah. So
you guys still text about it?
We do. Yeah. We actually had an incident. God, what was that? It's on his junior year. No, had to be sophomore year. That's when the whole Duke thing would happen.
Oh yeah.
We had a little incident that happened prior to Duke. Some kids were kicked off the team, and 2 weeks later, and they were actually talking about canceling the season at that point.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but it didn't hit the news like it did, right? Like it wasn't that extreme, but it was enough to probably go off of. It would, in this day and age, I'm sure it would have been, canceled.
Oh, I'm sure this day and age, anything that is like a whiff of nefarious activity, it's like, well,
Totally.
kill it now, cancel it. Man, so where were most of the kids coming from that played at Fairfield?
There was a couple Maryland kids. We were talking earlier. It's like a couple Cover Hall.
Yeah.
Trying to think, Bullis, Gonzaga, John Carroll.
Oh yeah.
Roommate of mine, Matt Scanlon. And then trying to think, but a majority. We had actually a couple Midwest kids.
Oh really?
And a Florida kid.
Okay.
And then New York.
Yeah, the New Yorkers.
Yeah.
And you get those strong
islands.
So when you're in school, what'd you study in school?
So it was marketing management.
Okay.
In the business school.
Okay.
A lot of the guys either kind of went the finance route. I've always, was interested in the marketing side of things. I remember doing my senior project on Under Armour when they first came out with their shoes.
Shit. Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So it was fun.
Now, when you were in school, did you have any idea that you would get into real estate?
Towards the end of senior year, trying to figure it out, right? Interviewing, I was interviewing with companies that had great marketing. And, kind of like when I was getting closer to a job or whatever, I was like, do I want to be in Jamaica, New York? No. With Target? No. And I was trying to figure out, I was dating someone at the time and she was a year below me on the women's lacrosse team. And so it was just like, all right, what am I doing here? Ended up kind of followed in my brother's footsteps because I actually thought about the commercial real estate route. I have an uncle who's in the business, works for Fairfield, National Nation Shore, Miller, SVN Miller.
Yep.
They're out of Salisbury.
Yep.
He's been around forever, doing it forever. And he put me in basically it was 2008, right?
Yep.
Recession.
Oh, yeah.
Ryan, if you want to live in your parents' basement for the next 5 years. I said, hell no, I'm not doing that. So I said, I'll come back to you. And so I ended up going to work for the E&J Gallo winery. My brother had worked for them for, I guess, 6-7 years at that point.
Okay.
So I kind of followed in and trying to figure out where I was going to go. Never thought I'd land in Detroit, Michigan.
Oh my God, you were in Detroit?
Yep.
Holy
2008 to like 2012.
Jeez Louise.
Yeah.
All right. What's life like in Detroit?
Well, recession started, the big three crashed, right?
Yeah.
There was a lot of unease.
Yeah.
And Detroit, it was a good experience. It was good to get away. I was an East Coast kid, right?
Yeah.
Stayed on the East Coast for school. Went to a place where I knew no one.
It takes courage, man. I don't know that I would have the balls to do that. That takes a lot of courage.
It was tough. The group that I worked for at the time, it was called J. Lewis Cooper Wholesaler. So what Gallo did was they basically they have these partnerships with wholesalers across the U.S. and say, look, we're giving you a kid out of college, well-educated. We're going to train them, but so are you. And we'll pay half the salary. You pay the other half, but you're getting like a solid sales rep to start.
Yeah.
He's not going to be here probably 4 years from now, but for the time being, you're going to have a, solid person you can rely on for whatever territory.
So your job, you're going to different liquor stores and vendors to try and sell them.
So there was on and off premise. I had off premise, which was like at the time. So out there you had Myers, as they would say, even though it's for Meyer. They have the silent S out there. Kroger's, which is just Kroger to my mind. But so it was Meyer, Kroger, Walmart, CVS, Rite Aid at the time.
Yeah.
And then you had like kind of like other little ancillary, businesses or chains, so to speak. So I was on the like chain retail side of things. And in the beginning, it was great. I mean, it was kind of, you were selling, you were getting into these stores. So you had a team of like 5 or 6 reps.
Yeah.
Some reps you shared, like you had a partner with. So like your brand counts were half and half. And then you had your own stores to get credit for those case sales. And then you had a, sales manager, so to speak. And then you had a division manager above that.
Okay.
At the distributor level. And we had a good crew. I was literally the only East Coast kid. So it was that kind of eye-opening. So first time I'm meeting everyone, division manager was a Gallo guy. He was from Buffalo, New York. And so he's like, all right, hey, Ryan, like, let's, I moved to this town called Royal Oak, which used to be just a railroad town.
Yeah.
And it kind of blew up right before the recession, and pretty cool little town, probably like mile markers. I was on 10 mile, 11 mile versus 8 mile with M&M.
Yeah, but
and the dividing factor is really 8 miles between the city and like, call it like countryside county, dividing line. And then 75, the main highway to Detroit, kind of bringing you up and down the state, kind of is like east and west.
Gotcha.
So I show up to this Italian restaurant, and I'm wearing very similar shirt that I'm wearing now with khaki blue shorts and boat shoes.
And they're like, what the is this guy?
They're like, I walk in and they all just stop and stare at me, and they're like, what the are you wearing? I go, hey, Brassel, I don't see any water around here. Do you? So fast forward that year, we get some bonuses, right? We had some case goals at the end of, from suppliers and so forth. And that was key. It was like, I got to sell so many different brands.
Yeah.
It wasn't just Gallo. So which was unique. Sometimes you go work for, a distributor and you're selling just Gallo brands.
Okay.
So I got to understand the industry and different suppliers. And it was a really cool experience. So fast forward, there was a mall out there called Somerset Collection, really high-end mall. And believe it or not, like Detroit, that area, Royal Oak, and then north, like Grosse Pointe, which Clint Eastwood had his Gran Torino movie that was being filmed when I moved in.
Nice.
So I saw Clint walking around town.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and but you had like Bloomfield Hills, West Bloomfield, Birmingham.
Yep.
It's like all the new money Detroit.
Okay.
Like very high end. If I wanted to go find Matt Stafford at the time, I just go up to Birmingham.
Gotcha.
Or some of those guys lived in my town.
Okay.
I would see them out in bars.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah.
All right.
And everyone was like, oh, cool, Matt Stafford. It wasn't like a thing. But yeah, so fast forward, we go to the Somerset Collection Mall at the Nordstrom's up there, and what's there? Sperry wrap. And 4 of the guys that are with me go, hey, I think I'm gonna get some Sperry's. And I'm like, wow, okay. And they were like, I was like, if they ain't calling the kettle black, I was like, oh, what the hell, guys? I was like, you gave me all this crap a year ago, and now you're getting them? I was like, I told you they're comfortable. You don't have to be on a boat to wear them.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I was a trendsetter, and that's,
I would call it that. This was the beginning of trend setting.
Yeah. So yeah, I lived there for like almost 5 years. Worked my way up, saw different territories, had the high-end territories, and on my way out, I was south of Detroit. That was a different experience.
Oh, yeah.
And at that time, I was a sales manager.
Okay.
But they kind of knew Gallo was moving me on, and they're like, all right, Ryan, we need help down here. So had a group down there, and, I wasn't selling the high-end wines anymore. It was more box wine.
Yeah.
But it was cool, and then actually the job moved me back to Montgomery County.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I kind of had said I wanted to move back to the East Coast because a lot of my buddies also had moved on to different parts of the country that I kind of started with. We had a really solid crew in Detroit. We all got along, even though we came from different backgrounds, but it was pretty cool.
That's nice.
Yeah. So it was good. good experience. All my buddies and probably some of yours too. Like when you graduate, you went New York, Boston, DC.
Oh yeah.
That was like the one anomaly.
I want to know, like, well, guys, I'm in Detroit now, so if you guys want to come visit, and they're like, no.
Well, actually, yeah, God bless my wife because we were dating while I was out there, and she lived in DC. And
no kidding.
Yeah, we did over a year-long distance relationship.
How'd you guys meet?
So we've small town Annapolis. So
it always comes back to Annapolis.
Kill me for saying this, but a couple years older than me. But she so her brother and I went to high school together, actually.
Okay.
He was at Center with me, and probably too much information, but his wife and I were like brother sister growing up.
Yeah.
And her older sister and I were in the same class, but we were all like a year apart, put it that way. So we've known each other a long time, and Patrick, my brother-in-law, had two sisters. Actually, the oldest sister went to Fairfield, small world, and married Will from Gilman, and my brother went to Gilman with him. So it's all intertwined.
Oh my God, everybody knows everybody.
Yeah. So Kelly and I, actually hit it off at put it this way, my brother-in-law's wife, her sister's wedding.
Okay.
So we hadn't seen each other in a while. Actually, randomly, we ran into our brother Jimmy's in New York City. Yeah, and local establishment, and over New Year's 1 year, and I was still living in Michigan at the time, and it was early on, and she was dating someone at that time I wasn't. And then we hit it off at the wedding, and then kind of kept in touch, and then start dating. And God bless her for making the trek out to Detroit, because there were times where I tried to take her home, and there'd be a snowstorm, and to the airport, and
so you're gonna have to stay with me for a little bit longer.
Yeah. So, and unfortunately, the job brought me back to the area.
Yeah.
And ironically enough, I was like, hey, I found this apartment. It literally was like right next door to our apartment behind the Russian embassy off Wisconsin Avenue.
No.
Yeah. Okay. So I got to live my DC life that I did right after college, right?
Yeah.
We had a blast, lived in a tiny little apartment. She moved in pretty quickly. Changed around the whole,
she couldn't resist.
That's right. So we lived there for a while, and then kept finding ourselves coming back to Annapolis.
Okay.
She graduated St. Mary's.
Okay.
So, you mentioned like Jameson, you met with Jameson.
Yeah.
Nick Jameson and, all that stuff. So it's all, intertwined. So, she teaches there now. My kids go there.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And my mother-in-law taught there for like 30 years. So,
no kidding.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. So it was kind of, hey, this is where the kids are from. I'm like, okay.
So you get brought back to DC, and how long before you decided to get out of the wine game?
So I was probably another year and a half, 2 years.
Okay.
And, it just kind of hit me. It was like at a point where I was actually trying to go a different avenue with Gallo and more brand development than sales.
Yeah.
The job would have taken me into the Carolinas, which I was excited about. I always wanted to go south.
Yeah.
And it just, short version, just didn't work out. And I just kind of got to a point where I was like, you know what? I'm going to go do what I wanted to do. Picked up the phone, called my uncle, and it was kind of almost about 5.5 years later when I said, I'll talk to you in 5 years. So the market was a little better, not great for commercial. And he started putting me in contacts with people on this side of the bridge, as we would say. And, met with those folks, and then fortuitously ran into John Rosso.
Yeah.
And he was in Murphy Commercial at the time. And, I said, hey, it's been a while since we've reconnected. I was like, I'd love an opportunity to sit down with you and your broker and kind of, hear what you guys are about. I'm looking to get in the business. And fortunately they had, or unfortunately for me for them, but they just had two guys leave for various reasons. And one went to JLL and the other one just got out of the business. And so they were, open and hiring kind of thing. And met with the team. It was a great fit. And, I thank Dennis Murphy, for giving me the opportunity to get my foot in the door. Certainly it's not an easy business, and kind of take me under his wing and show me the ropes, because, the market wasn't great, and it's not easy. It's not an easy business, right? You kind of got to just dial, as he would say, dial for dollars.
Yeah.
And, slowly but surely, year one, you're not making a ton of money, right? And I'm going from full salary, decent salary, to all of a sudden, Kelly was, working at the time, and I was just like, and she was actually working in Virginia, so she was commuting, doing early mornings. And, it was eye-opening going, oh, our savings are like
This is not good.
Yeah, this is okay. So, it was pre-kids though, right?
Yeah.
And I said, I was like, I need to do this, want to do this before we have kids because it'll be even harder
Exactly.
to make that transition. So, fast forward, start to improve each year is what you want to see. And, John came to me, and John actually, had been doing it part-time while he was at Maryland. And then went full-time when he graduated, and has done a tremendous job. And, so he had come to me and said, hey, look, I want you to kind of come with me, but I'm going to go hang my own shingle. And I said, oh, okay. Came out and talked to Kelly. I was like, well, I didn't expect it now, but, and she's, well, what do you think you're going to do? And I said, well, I got to follow him.
Yeah.
I said, he's young and like-minded like I am and hungry and has done a fantastic job and has a great reputation. And I said, I just don't know where like my role is when he's gone and here at my current firm. And I was like, so I, had to break the news a couple months later.
Yeah.
And just kind of, I was like, and we had one on the way. Savannah was on the way. And I was like, I had to jump ship, because I knew if I didn't, I was going to kick myself. And I wanted to be kind of one of the first people in the door with John.
Yeah.
And, so that Rosso kind of started around kind of like end of 2016, 2017. Started in a tiny office.
Yeah.
Single office to start. And then we moved over to West Street and hired, at that time we had a good friend that kind of remained our broker for the time being. And then we had Gene Parker come in as our broker. Well, the knowledge, wears multiple hats. We're lucky to have him. And so he kind of came in and we started, expanding and growing, and added Colin and then Ross, and then Ryan Brandt.
Yep.
And then most recently Brooke, our first female of the firm, which is great. We've been searching for the right opportunity and right person, and she's going to be a great fit. So, we have a good core group. Everyone's kind of like-minded, and it's exciting. And, we're now over in West Annapolis, so, which we love, and just ease of access in and out. And some of us live here in Annapolis, some of us live in Smart Park, so it's easy to get to for everyone.
Yeah. Well, it's impossible to drive around Annapolis and not see a Rosso commercial sign. So you guys are doing damn well. And I've always noticed, particularly in like real estate's just an interesting space in general. But for people that ask, usually like commercial space is pretty male dominated, residential is pretty female dominated. So they'll ask like, what's the difference between residential and commercial? I said, it takes a lot longer to get going in commercial than it does in residential. And residential is just a lot of little projects that you can string together. There's a quicker turnaround in most cases, not all, but most.
Right.
Commercial is a totally different animal. Walk me through those first few years and what that's like.
It's tough. First of all, when you're green in the business and getting in, it's a totally different language, right? When I got my license, it's kind of crazy, but I went the residential route, right? Like I went to a Longo Foster down in Waldorf. Oddly enough, or I guess it was common, but I thought it was odd at the time. Had 30 some students in the class. I was the only one going commercial.
Yeah.
And I remember the instructor just being like, all right, well, just listen to what I'm saying and learn enough, but you can throw it out the window because what you're going to learn and do is totally different.
Yeah.
And so my broker said the same. He's like, Ryan, you're going to learn by doing it here. Yeah. Right. So, and I did. And it is a totally different animal. John and I joke, and others in the firm, we don't want to touch residential, because we don't play in that sandbox. Right. And it's just different. That's different. There's always changes now to residential, and I can't even begin to where to start, and it's like, but on our side, I mean, it takes a long time to get deals done. It really does. And if deal does go by quickly, you're like, huh,
where's the shoe going to drop?
Yeah. Right. And sometimes it does. And then it's like, yep. And there it is, Yep. But, I mean, and each, whether it's a sale or a lease, I mean, especially now with the market the way it is on the leasing side of things, not so much retail. Retail's still high demand, very competitive. you're really trying to look for clients that, are new opportunities. Cause let's just say we're going to give you an example, like a nail operator, right?
Yeah.
And they got multiple units. You're out looking for new retail development, not existing, because most existing retail centers already have a nail salon, right? Or some exclusively you can't go in. A lot of food users out there, really cool brands that, fortunate enough we're able to work with personally myself or just as a firm. And I think that side of the business is, thank God we're in that side of the business right now. Because the office side of the world, it's tough.
Yeah.
And you've got buildings that are 50% vacant. You got tenants that are a little skittish and what they want to do, kind of unsure. And I get it, with everything that's going on in today's world and the market and politics, not to get into that, but people are a little hesitant, and kind of reserved, or they're downsizing.
What do you forecast for that? Do you think that with the Doge stuff and making people come into the office, do you think that's going to translate to the corporate world getting back in?
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, some of these bigger corporates, my brother works for Johnson & Johnson, and, even 2 years ago, they were like, all right, we're putting our foot down. You guys got to come in at least 3 days a week.
Right.
Otherwise, you're fired. I mean, that's what he said. He's like, and for my brother, it didn't matter to him,
Yeah.
But, for others, he said there were people that loved working remotely and they didn't want to come back. And, so the JJ is like, all right, well, that made it easy for us. You're out.
Well, our hope with that was like, all right, well, maybe we're going to see this influx of inventory from people that are like, oh, I can't from home now. Well, then I guess I got to sell and move closer.
Right.
Or some people like, we have so many like government contractors and government employees just being, so close to DC that we were thinking, all right, well, maybe this is, maybe it's a good thing. Maybe it'll solve some of our inventory crisis that we're having. And so far, no.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not happening. Maybe it comes down the pike later, but it's tough out there.
It is. I mean, usually we'll constantly, we want to be educated just like yourself on the market, right? What's going on? And we had a landlord ask us one time, like, well, what is going on? And we were talking about a specific set period of time. And, when COVID hit, obviously the world stopped, right?
Yeah.
And then, 21, 22, people were kind of getting back to work and wanted to be back at work. And like, everything was kind of starting to trend up again. Not great, but like, was heading back in the right direction. But I feel like now that we've gotten in a couple of years removed from COVID, there's almost a worse effect. And I think, the office side of things, it's people are watching their bottom line.
Yeah.
So like, your class kind of B, C offices are pretty actually well laced for the most part. Very little vacancy to some extent, depending on where you're looking in the market. But Class A is struggling.
What's a Class A? Is that like your premium office buildings?
Yeah, premium, granite lobby.
Okay.
Usually elevators serve. The aesthetics, are higher end.
Yep.
Maybe they're a lead building, energy.
Yep.
So there's a combination of things that go into that, and that's where tenants we're seeing either on renewals they're a little hesitant to make any kind of decision, or we're saying, you know what, we don't need that space anymore. We're going to give you back 3,000 square feet. We want to remain because it's a pain to move, but like, oh, by the way, I want you to reduce our rent by $5 a foot.
Yeah.
And so, we're
convincing the owner.
And it's become a real. I mean, there's buildings certainly out there that, maybe an owner, you hear about it. I feel like it started in San Francisco and DC, the bigger cities, right? And you had these stories of landlords over leveraging themselves, and then their buildings now 50% full, and they're just basically handing it back to the lender, going, "Hey, there you go."
Yeah.
And that was traditionally has always been around Raleigh County pretty well infiltrated from the outside world, mainly because of the economic driving factors that are around here. You got the West County area. And then kind of the Fort Meade, right? And then you got the BWI corridor, always remains strong. And then you've got like the Naval Academy and the state capitol, right?
Yeah.
There in Annapolis. So like there's always been a good demand and so forth. But, things are a little rough, right? Right now. And, but, we as a firm do a lot more than just obviously office. So, retail sales, investment sales,
Yeah.
so it keeps us in business, put it that way.
What's more prevalent, a lease or a sale?
It's interesting. So traditionally it's been, call it 60% leases, 40% sales, roughly, right? This year I feel like it's maybe 50-50, if not flipped.
Okay.
It's flipped a little bit, a lot more sales, a lot more opportunity for owner user or decent investments for folks.
Is that investors offloading stuff that's not performing, or case by case?
A lot of these generational.
Okay.
They're, getting their mid 70s, early 80s, and they're saying, I'm done.
Yeah.
Or I want to, pay off this loan and hold on to this asset over here for some time and just kind of be done with the day to day and, scale back here. So, a lot of these clients we're getting an opportunity to work with, we've worked with for a long time, and they're just at a point where they're saying, all right, we're going to sell off some of these assets, because maybe part of it is also their kids don't want to have any interest in it.
Right.
And they don't want to deal with it. So, when you have that, you have some of these folks that are ready to move on and sell.
Yeah, I get that. So you've had quite a few big deals. One in particular, the Naval Academy
Sure.
Alumni Association.
Yep.
All right, walk me through that sale. How do you guys get it? How do you work through that?
Yeah, so they did it, actually it was probably one of the cooler experiences I've ever been a part of. And I say that because it's just their systems and processes, you're dealing with Navy guys, right?
Yeah.
So, we had a Zoom call, and you have the Admiral on there because he's on the board, and, various, obviously, other alumni and with various backgrounds. And, they interviewed 3 firms. And, we felt like, came away with it saying, hey, if we don't get this, great, we can learn from it. But we felt like we did a pretty good job. So it was a pretty intense interview.
Yeah.
More so than maybe the norm, right? Really trying to, and it was great because it pushed us to that next level where we wanted to be in terms of our marketing and like presentations, right? And it just made us think outside the box. How do we really impress these guys? Obviously we did and got awarded the listing. Really cool process. It was interesting to, when we got into it, having not just the press, because it was out there, everyone knew about it. The history of the properties, learning those was really cool. Understanding that Ogle Hall was like the first governor's mansion with Samuel Ogle.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. And you walk in, even though it was used as offices for the last 50 years, you could feel that this was a residence at some point in time.
Yeah.
Not so much the carriage house, but, and then you had the 49 house next where most of the offices were. But there was, and then you had all these Naval Academy weddings that were held there. There was a bar, full kitchen downstairs, like very cool stuff.
It's a cool place. Man.
Yeah, very cool place. And going through our system and processes, we had 8 offers.
Jeez, Louise.
Yeah, and arranged, right? So we said, all right, we're going to go back to the top 4 or 5 and say, all right, give us your best and final, give them some guidance, and eventually chose a group that ended up buying in, and then we actually represented them again.
Yeah,
and sold it again.
Yeah,
it's not often you can say you sell a property twice like that.
No. What was their original intention when they bought it?
They were going to do a B&B, which they did do special exception approval through the city. It took like 3 years. Yeah. And they had a loan, and I don't think anyone could probably anticipate it was going to take 3 years to do it.
No.
And so they were at a point where like, hey, we're not going to go down this path anymore. We got to sell. And so they came back to us and saying, hey, look, you guys know this better than anyone. Can you help us?
Damn.
So, and then through that process, actually, the bad news for them was that everyone knew what they paid for it.
Right.
And it's now sat for the past 3 years with no improvements.
Right.
So they weren't going to get the value. So we had a couple of offers out there that were low ball offers, and it didn't, come to find out where they were on the financing side of things. There was or the debt, it makes sense to sell at that price. So oddly enough, in the zoning code, you can do single family residence. And I was like, well, why don't we try this?
Yep.
They were a little reluctant because they just didn't want it in the press again like it was last time.
Yeah.
And then about a week later, believe it or not, we got an unsolicited offer for one of the properties for single family residence conversion.
Yeah.
So I said, guys, this is, not that we do residential, but
Told you.
Yeah, told you. So they said, okay, fine, let's go. And sure enough, you can imagine the interest level we got, but it was interesting because obviously now we weren't dealing with commercial agents, we were dealing with residential agents.
Oh yeah, God bless you, dude.
And that was an experience. Just the way they were acting.
I feel like a good, solid commercial agent can have patience, and they understand that it's a business transaction and nothing's going to move immediately.
Right.
Residential is not that. Residential, they want answers yesterday. I need, especially in this kind of market where inventory is, 60% or more below what the traditional average is.
Totally.
They're like, I got to have an answer ASAP, and I want you to take this. And what do you mean we can't do this? What do you mean we can't do that? This is ridiculous. Are you kidding me? And yeah, it's just, there's quite a bit.
There's a lot of that. A lot of the conversation. Well, what do you mean you can't show it? And I'm like, listen, it's a historic property. The owners, there's materials in there that are owned actually still they were donated by to borrow, because at one point they were going to do a museum as part of it.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of artifacts in there. And so I said, you guys understand, like one of us has to be there. And it's unusual. I'm happy to meet you on a weekend. I really am. But, I'm at my brother's Ironman in Cambridge or brother-in-law, excuse me. And, my other colleagues are out of town. They couldn't figure it out. They were like demanding, I actually had a broker call me one time from one of the offices and say that he demanded that I show him the property. I said, yeah, just let me know when you want to get in there. Well, I'm going away for 10 days. I'm like, okay, well, great. Let me know when you get back. He, we ended up going under contract anyways with someone. So, he obviously never got in. But, it was to your point, it was interesting. I guess with the change in rules, they were asking now what the fee was immediately.
Right.
But I was like, my mindset on the commercial side is on our side, we never really traditionally asked what's the fee. That's never my first question.
Well, you guys usually negotiated into the deals on each one. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, usually there's the listing agent has an agreement with the landlord, right? Or seller. At some point we'll ask, what is the co-broker fee?
Right.
But usually I want to make sure it's a fit, right? Because I'm not counting my dollars by any means.
Yeah, I got to make sure that this is actually going to work first before we.
Right, and that's why when I interact sometimes with someone that's not familiar with the commercial process, and to your point, they're like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, the zoning code's X. What is the use? Well, I'm not going to tell you. Well, then I'm not going to meet you, because if it's someone that can't go into the space, then you're wasting your time and my time, right?
Exactly.
So, it's just, again, the further point, it's always an interesting interaction. And, we're always willing and happy to help, but at some point it's just like, all right, what is your real fiduciary responsibility over there? If you don't know some stuff to at least make it enough dangerous to help your client out. Right. Sometimes I feel like I'm doing both sides of the deal.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And that's a tough line to teeter. And we talk about that with our team all the time, where it's your job, yes, we don't work for free. That is correct. We do have to charge something, and, we charge whatever we feel like is commensurate for that region, that area, on whatever the specific deal is. But how do you maintain that fiduciary responsibility, which means I'm doing exactly what my client wants and what is in their best interest, not mine.
Right.
That's where having having that sales relationship can get a little murky sometimes, because you'll see agents, and I don't know if you see it as much in commercial, but you certainly see it in residential, where it's when the first question that they ask is, are you compensating? It's yes. I mean, we want this to go to a buyer that is ready, willing, and able.
Right.
And the best way to do that is to compensate for a buyer's agent. And it's just what usually when that's the first question, it's like when, you go to a job interview with somebody and the first question they ask is, well, how much does this pay? It's like, all right, well, are you interested in the job?
Right.
Or are you just interested
in the pay?
Right. And, there's a way to do it that is not, not to shoot down my car salesman guys, but you don't want to have that hanging over. Your job is to represent the client as best as you can. And if you can negotiate a good fee doing that, awesome. But our whole structure now has changed since the settlement in August, where in order to show a property, we have to have a buyer agency agreement written up in place prior to showing that. Most agents are abiding by that. And then that's details in there. This is what I'm paying my agent. 99% of the time, that fee is going to get covered by the seller. But in the instance that it's not, we've got to let you know as your broker, hey, that they're only going to compensate X amount. So you would have to bring Y to the table. Are you still comfortable doing that? And that's just being honest and authentic and straightforward. And I think part of the reason that got implemented in the beginning was, as part of the settlement was that there's just too many instances, and not necessarily around Maryland, but across the country, where that was just not transparent for people. And that's something that some judge somewhere decided, all right, we need to make this a thing for people now. But it's a tough thing doing that. Bring me to the ski house.
Yeah.
All right. Tell me about that deal.
Yeah. I mean, that was around shortly after COVID. Longtime family that owned it. Funny, they had a bar upstairs.
Oh, really?
Non-alcoholic bars preference.
Okay.
That was kind of like the remind me of like the Club H2O in Ocean City back in the day. I mean, it was interesting. I'm like, what is this doing up here? This is so like 1980s.
Yeah.
I mean 90s if you give it, but yeah, it was like the bar for like the neighborhood kids to like hang out at. There was arcade machines.
No kidding.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was like the hot spot. It was the hangout back in the day. The parents that owned it, they had, I guess the husband actually had passed away, sadly, when we were starting to work our way through selling it. The daughters were involved in the property as well. And, it was a tough one, right? Because, your access there isn't great.
Right.
And, it used to be back in the day, around 50, you could just pull off to the side of the road and pull into the ski house, or anglers across the other way, or the McDonald's, right?
Yeah.
And then 50, they put up the guardrails, and now they've completed it by shutting off where got fence deck is right before the bridge. Like you can't access that anymore unless you go off the exit, right? So it makes it harder, right? You really, good news is they've been around a while. There was still a demand, and everyone knew them, right? We ended up selling to kind of a broker I wasn't familiar with, kind of out of the market, and his clients that ultimately I think they were going to try to do some sort of like restaurant deli, a couple different concepts. To be honest, I don't know what they're doing with it right now. Did you drive by now? And ski house has moved. They sold the business, and they're now on Bestgate Road. And it was a challenging one for sure. It wasn't easy. It was great to work on the opportunity, but it was a listing almost like you kind of done everything you can, and it was almost a little bit like a waiting game for the perfect buyer, right?
Yeah.
And it had its extensions and various things during that process, which you start the process, right? You talk about the longevity of these commercial deals sometimes, and it's like, oh, great, 60-day due diligence, 30-day close. You're building your pipeline. You're like, all right, we're going to close in June. And it's like 45 days into it, you're like, we're not closing in June.
Are we sure?
Yeah. We're now closing in September.
God.
Or maybe sooner, but things go, and it'll be fine. There were like kind of no real issues. It was just COVID effects, right? Like it because appraisers were backed up, or for whatever reason, it was just a slower process at that time.
Yeah.
So really, the only thing that was through the wrench, it was wait for the appraisal, and you can't control that.
There's so many things that are out of our control as agents on any particular deal but unfortunately for us, it reflects on you when something doesn't go well. And I tell people all the time, this is, as good as I think I am, and I've sold you on how good I am, this is a chair, and there's 4 legs on this chair. We've got title, we've got financing, we've got me, and we've got the other side.
Right.
And if one leg on that chair doesn't do something that they're supposed to do, you fall over.
Totally.
And you just got to dust yourself off, get back up, fix the chair, and now we're good.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
It's a tough thing, man. I also have my notes here, Magothy Beach. Oh, God, I can't talk to
Magothy Beach Road.
That's it. Magothy Beach Road investment sale.
Yeah. I mean, going back to what we were saying earlier about some of these kind of, whether you call it exclusive listing or pocket listing, that was one where, with us, being active in the market, you develop relationships and you kind of know who, like, certain buyers like certain things. And so we went to a group that knew would probably have an interest, because we actually had sold, there was a retail pad in front of that. We ended up selling to a dispensary, represented a cannabis dispensary group. But out of that, you get to know other people that are like looking at a sale like that, right?
There's certainly been a lot more cannabis dispensaries. What are the restrictions on that?
They've lessened now.
Okay.
I mean, federally, like, there's banks that still can't do loans,
right?
Or if from a lease side, although landlords are okay with the use, they physically can't lease to you for their mortgage.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So that's how the business, but there are banks and I feel like it's because back then it was even harder because you had so many requirements and conditions to open. You can't be within a mile of another one. You can't be within to a school or residence or lot line to lot line. Like, there was all discrepancies, and that one worked out actually, because at the time there was or still is, but there was a Montessori school down the road. Well, it went to court, right? And we were for a special exception hearing, and they won because, the Montessori school stood up and said, hey, like, we don't want this here. And mind you, it was kind of tucked away down here, and they're over here fronting, Route 100. But point being, it was nearby and they didn't want it. Yeah. Well, judge said, well, according to the state law, you're actually not a school, you're a daycare. So by definition. So even though they, so it was something I had learned too, because I figured they kind of fall under the school category.
Right.
So it was interesting. They were awarded the approval, and So, but the Green Turtle, that was just one where it was unique, and we knew the guys at Green Turtle or at the franchise, and good operators, and we just had extended their term, so like another years. I think it was like 10 years worth of term, and so that was the time to sell it. And the developer of that site, we had sold off his medical building next door. We had sold off that what used to be like a Hardee's, and then it was a Mexican place, and I think that location for a drive-through concept was a little tough because there's so much more else around there, better options, and had the visibility, and that really didn't. So like dispensary is kind of like, you're going to find that dispensary, right?
Oh, it's a destination.
Yeah. So it worked for that use. But yeah, we sold to a group, and it was pretty quick closing, not a whole lot to it. So, it's just one of those things, just building those relationships and being in the market, and, and also like remembering those people that, because out of that, a lot of times, we just sold something in Turner Park, and you develop a lot of calls, a lot of personal, development and relationships. And it's like, well, I remember that guy, he didn't buy it. He may want to buy this next thing.
Right.
So it's just keeping that log of those buyers. Right. And taking the time to do it.
Smart agent does.
You got it.
What you've touched on some of this stuff already, but what are some of the biggest trends that you're seeing in the commercial space right now?
Yeah. I guess you go by asset class, right? Industrial, still it's hard to find, in terms of for clients, whether it's, flex office kind of storage products, industrial product, especially on the smaller side. Yeah. When I say smaller, like call it less than like 3,000 square feet for someone. Yeah. It's just hard to find. Okay. Because a lot of bays are built out that way to some extent, but it's just, and then some of these sellers also at this point in time want a high price per square foot. And it's just kind of hard to justify, because some of the comps that have sold, it's like you look at it and you're like, hey buddy, like And so we're like, fine, I'll just sit on it.
You're only as good as your comps, because how many people are buying these cash?
Right. Not many.
Not many.
A lot of them leveraging. So, but there's still a demand for industrial. But when we talk to some of the other brokers, especially the guys who do a lot in like Baltimore City and there where you've got a lot more industrial, they're busy, certainly. But they said, we've had to do some price cuts. And so, 2 years ago, it was like kind of like the residential world in 2020, right? Like I felt like those guys were just busy and doing deals and, getting top dollar or top dollar for leases and so forth.
Yeah.
So there's definitely been, it seems like somewhat of a slowdown to some extent, but still busy and active. Office, as we touched on, it's struggling. We're trying to sell 2 assets right now that are, like I said, like 50-60% vacant.
Yeah.
And they're big buildings. And, it's like, what do you do with them? How do you continue to push it out to the market so it's not stale? Put it at a price that's reasonable, because you can't do it on a cap rate because it just doesn't pencil, right?
What do you see as like a solution for that office stuff?
At the end of the day, it's probably a conversion of some sort if the zoning allows for it. We had a couple groups, look at this one building off Defense Highway we've been trying to sell for some time now. And we've had close offers, just couldn't bridge that gap, unfortunately. And buyer was like, it's only worth X. And seller was like, well, I'm not coming down to that. And it's like, in hindsight, maybe they should have taken the deal, several months ago. But that was an owner user. I mean, it's either finding that owner user who can use a good chunk of that space, and then feel like they can expand, or there's room for growth. And there's some other in-place leases there that bring some cash flow. But if you're looking at, we get calls all the time from investors, and I'm like, you're not going to like the cap rate,
Yeah.
And they're like, well, what do you mean? I want to look at this. I'm like, well, here's the deal, and I really be upfront with them. So, and they're like, oh yeah, you're right. All right, never mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have that, the different asset classes of office, like I said, like kind of BC's, pretty competitive, not too much vacancy there. There's the more higher end offices that are struggling. But we saw, pre-COVID, there always seemed to be decent vacancy downtown. Part was like parking and so forth.
Yep.
And
Parking's always been a bitch.
Yeah, exactly. So what COVID did was basically force people to kind of reset their minds to some extent and say, we want to be back in the office, but in order for us to attract younger talent, we need to be near things.
Right.
And walking distance. So like we would run into folks, whether we were working on the tenant rep side or being on the landlord side. And, these spaces were starting to lease up all of a sudden. And it was partly because people wanted to be in a town that had, hey, I can walk out and I can go get lunch. I can go shop here. I can do this or entertain clients pretty easily. Yeah. They didn't worry so much about the parking. They figured it out. But I will say the buildings that are on the outer edge of the West Street Circle, there's vacancy there, but they're also the higher end office buildings, right? Kind of to further my point. So they got some decent chunk of vacancy. They're nice buildings, but people don't want to pay $35, $36 a foot if they can find something that's a little cheaper. They're willing to go elsewhere. But because there's not a whole lot available office-wise downtown, unless you go over to Eastport, there's some really cool, unique opportunities over there and property we're working on right now. But, outside that, these groups are now starting to refocus kind of out on the outer corridors of kind of the county side versus city side of Annapolis.
You mentioned some of the retail spaces at the beginning of the conversation. Yeah. What's the most popular stuff? Is it restaurant concepts? Is it
food? Yeah.
Okay.
Food is definitely number one by far. You're not sure there's like the big box concepts and various things that are out there, but a lot of it's food oriented for sure.
Okay.
And if you look at like majority the two, take an example, the Beacon Square and Shops at Riva along Riva Road.
Yep.
We joke now like that corridor is becoming Wisconsin Avenue.
Dude, yes. I was going to say that. It's crazy.
It's nuts. And, but it's needed. And part of what's also needed is multifamily, right? So I'm happy to see that the county's been working to get some density here. Downtown needs density in order to support these businesses, right? And that's why you're seeing some of these buildings that are being bought downtown, they're being converted to residential to some capacity if they can do it.
Yeah.
And that means maybe keeping the first floor office retail, but then putting in a couple apartments above if they can. Because, part of it is with office, especially now, some of these buildings aren't ADA compliant naturally, right? So a lot of businesses, for insurance purposes, or clients or customers come in, they need elevator access or first floor or something, and these buildings don't have it. So what do? You either wait around for the perfect office tenant, but what's the longevity there? Or do you convert it to residential? So we've had clients do that, and they may have a vacancy, but it's gone quick once that comes up. And some of these guys or gals have gotten really creative on how to build out some of these spaces and maximize the amount of units they can get in. But the retail, I mean, the back on the Brewer Road properties, I mean, if you look at them, they're all food for the most part.
Well, we do need a better food scene. I'll be honest with you. Annapolis is okay, but areas like Severna Park, me and my buddies talk about it all the time. It's like, what a great place to live. But if we could just have a better food scene there, it would be one of the best places. It's lacking.
We say it's 10 years behind Charleston.
Yes.
And we're involved in some of these, food concepts to some extent. And, you start to see COVID's helped that too. Because you had DC operators, people that weren't really going to consider Annapolis, and all of a sudden they're here, right?
Yeah.
So there's still a small handful that, we frequent, to be honest. But I feel like it is getting better. And, right now we're marketing another building that's owned by the Annapolis Capital Partners. And, they've been doing a great job reinvesting in the city and trying to bring concepts, and not only with their B&Bs, but, something like Fort Church, which is the old Coldwell Banker building. And, we're looking for a marquee restaurant there. And we've been talking to operators outside of Annapolis, right? Like we're targeting DC operators or New York, or, people with the concepts that would be, and we've gotten close to a couple groups. I think part of the issue a little bit is, Napa's a little unproven.
Yeah.
And, I had one guy ask me, well, what famous chefs do you have here? I was like, I don't know. How do I answer that one? And I think, but, and the other thing is, because you have smaller institutional owners of these buildings, a lot of these guys aren't required to report sales. So it's very hard, because these guys want to know, well, what are the other restaurants doing? Unless you have like a personal relationship, it's hard to get some of these numbers. Sometimes we're able to get them, and share, hey, X is doing this amount per year, because it helps sell these guys and say, okay, I think I can do X then. Yeah, I know we have a proven brand, proven concept. But, at the end of the day, it's still a work in progress. So, if anyone knows anyone that wants to whole street corner, let me know.
Well, that's one of my favorite spaces. I remember working in that office like 8, 9, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It's just got so much potential to be something really special. But I'm fascinated by the restaurant scene. It's a tough business to work in, man. What's the attrition rate in restaurants? It's 80%, something like that.
I mean, it's hard. I mean, my family owns Harpoonians and Family and Brew River and Salisbury, and so like I've always been around the restaurant business as a kid. My cousins run those restaurants, and my grandfather had another one on the inland Ocean City called Hannah's Marina Deck, and my brother and I both every summer would work for my uncle.
Yeah.
And so we kind of got to see the ins and outs, and it's a tough business. It's a grind.
It's hard.
For my cousins, come, I mean, really from like now to, going till like September or October, it's a grind every day, maybe one day off. There's success, and that's why, but they're also on site. You got to be there like 24/7.
That's going to be my next question. What does it take to run a successful restaurant?
You got to be there. I mean, my uncle to this day is still, whether he's watching from afar or whatever, he's watching, and he's on it and he loves it. And, I think he loved it when we were all there, because it's at any given time between my brother and I and my other 3 cousins, one of us was at the restaurant. But it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
It's gotta be, man. What makes a successful deal maker in today's commercial space?
Biggest thing is qualifying expectations.
Yeah.
I so many times when I started a deal, and let's just say I'm on the landlord side and there's broker and you got the tenant, right, or buyer, and you've got someone maybe that's doesn't quite know the market, or for whatever reason is, in my mind, misqualifying things. Um, I just go, this deal's not going to go in the right direction. Sometimes, proves me wrong, but majority of the time, I think that's the biggest thing that's missing sometime is, just being honest upfront but with people in the beginning. Because, you withhold something, or I'm sure we all make mistakes sometimes, but like at the same time, it can backfire you.
Yeah.
Choose Thursday, and then you've wasted a month, 2 months of work, and it was all for nothing because maybe you should have said this in the beginning, and you would have avoided that, right?
Yep.
So, from that standpoint, I think that's the biggest thing I would strive to anyone, even someone, like a newcomer coming in. You just want to make sure you're qualifying things accurately and correctly, and not misleading. Because, like I said, you get in these deals and then it's like, well, this is not going, you're, as we say in the office, our spidey senses are going off, and this is just something that's not going to work, probably.
That's the right way to do it. I mean, I had Jameson in here yesterday, and he said something very similar. He's like, I'm not smart enough to keep up with lies. So you're better off just being straight up. I know my market. I know, I've gotten, a decade plus worth of experience in it. So I know what the expectation should be. And I'm just going to be honest with you on what those are.
Yeah.
I don't have the time to bullshit you. And you don't want that as a client or a customer anyways.
Right.
Well, talk to me about the importance of understanding both tenant and landlord motivations.
Yeah. I mean, it's, in our business, a lot of times it can get tricky to some extent because, there's sometimes crossover where you've worked with a tenant for a long time, but it's your building.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So there's a trust factor there. And you gotta, people have to be comfortable on both sides. Otherwise you kind of feel yourself off and say, look, my fiduciary is over here, and that's why a lot of times we have 2 or 3 guys or gals, on a listing side of things.
It's a nice thing to have the team support.
Yeah. Because that way you can peel off but that's, again, going back to qualifying it to both parties, and, the landlord side and the tenant side. I mean, they want 2 different things, and, it's great doing those deals all the time because no one landlord's the same, right?
Right.
So everyone, you kind of, especially when you get a new listing that maybe has never used a broker, or, it takes a month or so to kind of understand their course and like what their wants and needs are. And so then you can, by learning from them, then you're able to go to a tenant that's looking at the space and help sell them on the property, but also like qualify things. Because if they're looking for, gold plates and napkins and so far, I'm like, this is not the place for you.
We're not doing that here.
Yeah, and you want to pay half the rent? Nah, sorry, that's not going to work. But and then tenants on some businesses are very savvy. They get it. Others are newer and never done commercial because, like I said, commercial is a different animal, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people try to associate with residential. I bought that. I'm like, no, not the same.
Yep.
Here are your expenses. This is what you can expect. Because there's so many different ways to structure a lease structure.
Yeah.
Whether it's full service, modified gross, triple net lease.
What's the most common? Is it a triple net?
For retail, yeah.
Okay.
And then there's different because your tenant's responsibility for like HVAC, right?
Yep.
You're paying for water, sewer. Whereas like you go into an office building, everything's typically baked into your base rent. And then you have your annual escalations. However, there's what's called like what we call base year. So let's just say you move into an office building like this, right? Base year will be 2025. Landlord has a set budget for the OpEx and real estate taxes. They go over budget by next year by $1,000.
Yeah.
You're, call it 2% of the building. It's $20, right? That's your bill, to make it simple math here. So a lot of people are trying to understand that. Actually, I'm going through a deal right now where it's been a challenge with the tenant because they're not grasping, and we're trying to help them by, do we put a cap on that? Like we're trying to offer alternatives because we're at lease. We've been at lease for a while.
Right.
And this deal's been, I don't know, going back to how long these things take. And it's like, all right, we're at the finish line. How do we get this broker and them to understand we're trying to do what's in their best interest here. And, so that's something when we're done here, I got to go figure out.
The best.
Yes.
What are some of the biggest red flags that you guys see?
So there's definitely some uses out there. We get calls on, or emails, should say, several times a week. There's uses out there that they're just tough. The foot traffic they bring in, maybe not the right fit for the building, right? Or whoever the co-tenants are. Because I've seen that backfire. I see a landlord go, well, I just want the cash flow. And they put in a drug rehab on the first floor. Well, it's the first floor that everyone uses that entrance. You got people smoking outside.
Yeah.
So forth. And I've learned that just early on in my career and working on a building where I was showing the turn in the building, not really thinking about who was on the first floor. And they walk in and I go, who's that? And I said, oh, this is what they do while I'm out. So from that standpoint, telling the landlord, hey, this little bit of a red flag for the building, right?
Yeah.
So, that's one aspect.
I wouldn't even have thought about that. That's a good point.
Yeah. So it's making my job harder because now it's like, this guy sees it. Who else is going to see it? Right.
Yeah.
And care about it. So, you have that kind of red flag. Other red flags are someone that just doesn't have a proven business concept. We try to always vet people's financials and, especially on if it's a food use or kind of retail. Okay. What's your business plan? You got to fill out this application. Some landlords require a background credit check.
Okay.
That's more on the retail side. We typically see occasionally I'll get on the office side. Office side's more like almost business where it's like, all right, let me see your tax returns. Because most of the time for offices, most of this guy's been around several years.
Yeah.
So it's intensive from that standpoint. But, it's just vetting them out, meeting the people. That's one thing at least personally, I want to meet the people.
Yeah.
I've done deals where I've represented a tenant, never met the broker. And so to me, it's kind of like, it's just interesting.
Yeah.
Because if I'm leasing the space to someone, I kind of want to know who's coming in.
Yeah.
And I get it on some deals where you've got more of a national company, right? National landlord that's got a guy sitting in Philly that has X amount of malls. Like I did a deal for Crumble Cookies.
Oh, yeah.
And out in Hagerstown. And a franchise, this was our second deal with him. And, it was one that like, hey, Ryan, I want to go to Hagerstown Valley Mall. Great. Double the guy out of like Philadelphia. Like dealt with each other over the phone, never met in person. But that one's a little different. But, when you got a broker to someone local to some extent, but you never meet them and they don't show up, it's like, wow,
I read something about Crumble, I think last week, where the guy that started it, I don't know if I read it somewhere. I can't remember where. Not important. But they're talking about the opening concept of it. And it's a guy that was like, yeah, I think I want to do like cookie business. And his friends were like, oh, do you like cookies? He's like, no, not in particular. I just see a gap in it. And I think I can.
Yeah, I think it was at a Utah they started, if I remember correctly. Great brand, great concept.
Oh yeah.
My wife and kids love going to Crumble.
Oh my God. We've done Crumble a few times. They are filling freaking cookies, man.
Oh yeah.
They're humongous, beautiful, taste great. We have them here in the office. They go like freaking hotcakes.
And all I can compare it to back then when we were kids, the Great American Cookie in the mall, the little PS, right?
Yep, exactly.
And back then we thought that was the best thing ever, but now this is a whole different level.
Whole different level, man.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into some philanthropy because you got a couple of associations that you're a part of.
Good. Like 10 more minutes.
Yeah. All right, let's do rapid fire. Best commercial deal you've ever worked on?
Probably Naval Academy. Probably not the highest price, generally speaking, but the ability to like sell it twice and just the uniqueness and just the whole process to go through to get there.
And that's a name maker too.
It's a cool one.
Favorite Maryland city for commercial real estate?
I I would just have to say around here. I mean, I know we're offices are here and stuff, but it's and I say that because it's just fun to be a part of something that you're bringing to the community, especially if it's a great concept or a business that can better the community out at the end of the day.
Yeah. What's the one deal you wish you would have closed?
Trying to think.
Something that you could have back.
Yeah. I mean, there was one that we, fell apart, but this is when the market was kind of turmoil with lenders, unsure of where rates were going. This was like 18 months ago.
Okay.
An investment sale. And, unfortunately, it fell apart. Added in, this is one of the things you try to control as much as you can. And even the buyer was kind of like, I'm sorry, guys, like, lender pulled the plug.
Wow. Where was it?
Up at Smart Park.
Okay.
But I will say this. Fast forward, we sold it.
Hell yeah. All right. There you go.
Yeah. So we did get an opportunity to get that one back.
Biggest piece of advice for young brokers?
I'd say you got to go in with just an open mind. It's not an easy business to get into. As you mentioned earlier, like it takes some time to really get traction. And, our friendly competitor, over at Mr. Mullen, he once told me, this is back when he was actually with McKinsey, and I always appreciated that advice. He said, year 2 or 3, if you can get through like 2 years, first 2 years, great. You're not doing a whole lot of like home runs, but you're doing okay.
Right.
Say, fast forward, if you can get to 5, maybe get some doubles, get some triples, you get a home run, maybe a grand slam, And I thought to myself, I was like, all right. And I finally got it was like 3 years in, and I was like, all right, get to 5.
Yeah.
Get to 5, and it was good advice. I mean, because it's like, I feel like, probably the younger generation to some extent is a different mindset, right?
Right.
And so they're like, I want it now. And why can't I have this done now? Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, it just doesn't work. So you got to be patient. You got to trust the process. And the first couple of years are not going to be easy.
No. So
I just say, it's trust the process. And if you like what you do, then stick with it, but you got to put it into work.
Yeah.
So
that's good advice, man. So, all right, let's wrap this up. Ryan, thank you for coming in, man. I really appreciate it.
See ya.
Anybody that, gets some takeaways from this, which should be a lot of you, just make sure that you reach out. Where can people find you if they need your services?
Yeah. You can, certainly find us on our website, right? rossocre.com. Obviously you can just look us up by name and find us pretty easily. Or, Ryan at rossocre.com is my email. So yeah, pretty easy.
All right. Awesome. Ryan, thank you, man. I appreciate you coming in, and, everybody listen, subscribe, leave a review. It really helps us out a lot. And, look forward to seeing you guys next week. Take care.